Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 6 of the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm your host today, and today we're going to discuss meditation. So meditation is something that I've been getting into more and more over the last couple of months, really. I've been looking into it for a couple of years, but I got a bit more serious about it over the last, especially over lockdown. One of the main reasons I wanted to get into it is I noticed when looking into top performers in different fields that a lot of them had some sort of meditative practice, mindfulness practice, or even just a reflection practice, such as it could be meditation or journaling as well, is another simple one, or even something as simple as just sitting and breathing for a couple of minutes. And that seemed to be across the board for a lot of top performance. Well, the ones that I came across anywhere was looking into, and it stood out to me a good bit. And really, like, it goes from presidents to NBA stars to NFL stars, Premier League, all the way up to CEOs of big companies. Just across the board, it was very interesting to note that a lot of experts in their field had some form of reflective practice or some form of mindfulness practice. From that, then I started to look into the research behind it, because I wanted to see why mindfulness was such an effective practice and why so many top performers had it in their routines, and what were the actual effects on the brain. You can get subjective effects, and you'll hear a lot of subjective. So people saying like, it makes me calm, makes me more relaxed, makes me think clearer. But I wanted to look at the objective results as well and look at the brain and see how the brain actually changes during a meditation, and then or what areas are activated during a meditation, and then what are the long-term effects on the brain after meditation as well. So today I'm going to talk a bit about the effects of meditation on your physiological and psychological well-being, the effect that it actually has on the brain, how the brain changes and adapts after a meditation practice, or once you've developed your meditation practice. I'll also touch a small bit on the activity in your brain, what's going on when you are meditating or when you're trying to get into a meditative state. Touch a bit on the types of meditation, and then I'm going to discuss a small bit about the meditation challenge that I did myself over the month of September. From that, what I learned, different techniques that I use, what worked for me and what might work for you then when you're actually getting into it as well. So really quickly, the challenge that I did in September was I started on my normal practice. I built it up to 30 minutes a day before that. So on the 1st of September, I did 30 minutes, and then after that I added 3 minutes a day. So first was 30, second was 33 minutes, then it was 36 minutes, and by the 30th of September I was getting in 2 hours of meditation in a day. So looking at the research of meditation, taking a scientist's point of view, meditation is defined as a training that aims to improve one's core psychological capacities, such as attentional control and emotional self-regulation. So attentional control is as it sounds. It's basically your ability to control your focus and your concentration on a given task at a certain time or over a certain period. Then emotional self-regulation is your ability to manage and control different thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and then they even throw in at the end, in pursuit of long-term goals. So it's really more so to do with your ability to manage disruptive emotions and impulses. An easy example would be if you get angry at something, that you're able to control that anger. You're not outlashing, you're not bursting out and letting someone know everything you think about them all in one sentence. What you're basically doing is you have better control over that. You're able to realize that anger is an emotion, and then that emotion drives a certain thought process, and that thought process might not be the most effective or most beneficial thing to say to that person on the spot. So meditation teaches you to control that, or teaches you to look at why different emotions drive different thought patterns and thought processes, and then what emotions are as well and what thoughts are. So in an easier way to say it, it teaches you how or teaches you about thoughts and how to actually disconnect from the emotion that you're getting. So as I mentioned there about anger, you could think about frustration in that if you got up in the morning and spilled coffee on yourself, how that would change your behavior for the day. You might be in a bit more of a rush. You might be more frustrated if you're stuck in traffic. You get angry faster. And then that can play throughout your day, and in that it's always in your mind. It's in the back of your mind, but you don't take notice of it because you're not aware. You're not as aware. You're just more aware that you're in a bad mood, but you're not as aware of what caused it and how that's affecting everything that you're doing and what you're saying over that day. So it definitely teaches that self-regulation, or improves your self-regulation, or teaches your self-awareness, I should say, as well. And becoming more self-aware it's important in daily life, in that it's something that everyone can practice and everyone can improve on, because knowing how you act in different situations and knowing how you're perceived by different people or different groups can influence your behavior and can influence how you approach that group. So it's something that everyone can take something from, and it's one thing that I've noticed as well with the meditation myself, that once I've started that practice and that I have been meditating a good bit more, I would try to get 5 to 6 days a week now, 7 if able, or if I am disciplined enough, but I definitely try to get 5 to 6 days a week. And I find that it definitely, when I'm in a situation, it's not that it makes you more paranoid, but it makes you more aware of how you can say things off the top of your tongue and you wouldn't think about it, and how that might offend other people. So it does take you back a step in that you're a bit more calculated as well in what you're trying to say. That's what I find anyway for myself. I'm going to touch a small bit just on the science behind it, meditation, science behind what's actually happening in your brain and what's happening after, then how it adapts after. So if you don't have a good science knowledge, don't worry, I'm not going to stay on it too long, but there's going to be some words that might be a bit outrageous in that you'd be thinking, geez, I don't know what he's talking about. But if you follow along, I'll hopefully explain it so that it makes a bit more sense and that you can apply it to your own life. Then you'll have a better idea of what I'm trying to get at. So there was a meta-analysis that came out in 2011, and basically what they looked at is they did fMRI imaging of the brain during meditation of experienced meditators. And what they found was that there was an increased activity in the caudate and the putamen, okay, and then the parahippocampus and medial prefrontal cortex. Now, if you hadn't heard of those before, now people who have a knowledge of them will have an idea of what they activate or what they're associated with. But simply enough, if I'm going to break it down, your caudate and putamen, when working together, they play a role in a thing called attentional disengagement. Okay, so attentional disengagement is basically a filter in your brain, and that's what, if you are, let's say, focused on reading for a second, and then your phone buzzes in the background, the fact that, or the ability to avoid checking that notification and continue reading or continue studying, that would in a way be attentional disengagement, because your attention was drawn over to the buzzing of your phone, but you were able to control it, you were able to control that emotion, and you were able to stick to what you were doing because it's in pursuit of a long-term goal, I suppose is what you could say. So attentional disengagement is as important as focus and concentration, because you need to be able to disconnect from things that are irrelevant. That's basically what the caudate and the putamen were associated with in this study in particular, in what they talked about when people were in a meditative state. Now, they do have they work on other, or associated with other functions as well, but specifically in this interest, this is what they were. This is what the researchers found or thought that they were, why they were being activated as much as they were. So the parahippocampus then is another area in your brain, and the researchers felt that this area was being activated, and because it's associated with controlling streams of thought, they felt that this was important in stopping you from wandering off and thinking about other things, basically, because you're able to focus your stream of thought. If you're in a meditation, you're trying to focus on your breath or focus on, let's say, a certain image, or even just focusing on a mantra. That parahippocampus is going to continue or help you to continue with that same stream of thought all the time. And then the caudate and the putamen are going to disengage any irrelevant info, or it's going to filter out anything else that's popping in. So that's those two are working together in that, or those three I should say are working together in that. And now the last one they found was the medial prefrontal cortex, and the idea was that this was working to improve decision making and improves memory consolidation, but this had more to do with the self-awareness part of the meditation, that you were able to decide when thoughts were coming into your mind. This is a basic way of putting it, that these are popping in for whatever reason. Let's say you're thinking about something you have to do later that day, and you were able to make the decision to focus on your breath again. So that's where your medial prefrontal cortex would come in. And as I mentioned in other podcasts as well, and what I say a lot on my Instagram, is that there's an idea that neurons that fire together, they wire together. So the more you use them, the better your brain gets at using them. So when you look at the different areas of the brain that are working and at the same time are working while you are meditating, you'll see that you'll be able to connect the fact that attentional control and then self-regulation, or improved attentional control and improved self-regulation, why they're actually associated with meditation, and how that mental practice of focusing on one thing the whole time is going to improve your ability to do that in other situations as well. So let's say if you are studying, if you're reading, or if you're trying to work on a project, all those same brain areas are going to be used, or similar ones are going to be used while working on a project. So you're basically working on them in a different environment when you're meditating. Now, when you look at the changes in long-term meditators or experienced meditators, if you look at the changes on fMRI imaging as compared to normal populations, you'll find that there's a few areas of the brain that have gotten bigger and a few areas that have actually decreased in size. And that's that neuroplasticity coming back into it again, and that neurons that fire together, wire together, areas that are used more are going to get bigger because they're going to take up more brain space. The amygdala then are two almond-shaped brain structures in either hemisphere, or in each hemisphere. And the main role, or what they would be associated with, is fear and processing fear. You'll actually find then in people that are chronically stressed that the amygdala will have increased a good bit in volume and in size because it's been activated so much. Now, if you think how that translates over to normal life, if that's a larger area of your brain, or if that's always been activated, how your ability to process fear is going to be altered and it's going to be affected, and how smaller threats may seem bigger because that area is so used of processing larger threats all the time. So it's become sensitized to smaller threats. And it does actually come back to what we talked about a couple of podcasts ago in the pain experience, in that how your nervous system actually gets sensitized if it's under threat a lot. That amygdala works in a similar way, in that it's been worked so much that it's gotten larger in volume, and that it has become sensitized to fear, and that you become more anxious and more fearful in situations that may not be as threatening or dangerous. Now, when you look at the brain of these experienced meditators, you'll find that amygdala has actually decreased in size. And what's actually increased in size instead is that prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. And now this is long-term meditators. This isn't at the time of meditating. This is when they look at their overall volume of their brain and compared to normal populations. Now, one limitation you would have to think of is that the normal westernized population now at the moment would be a chronically stressed in general, chronically stressed and chronically underslept or sleep deprived. So even though they are the average of our population now, they're not exactly a very healthy population either. So in relation to this, then they found that the prefrontal cortex, as I mentioned earlier, is involved in that decision making, but the long-term changes are actually associated with moderating social behavior and then changes in their personality. So the larger prefrontal cortex in this instance has more to do with how they react with others and how they're able to control their social relationships, and then what their personality is like itself and how reactive they are to different things. Now that's paraphrasing, obviously, but that's if you're taking from what the researchers are saying and breaking it down a small bit more. That's one of the areas that they would have looked at or have looked at. So the fact that the hippocampus actually increased in size was interesting to me. Now, we mentioned earlier was the parahippocampus. So this is the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is associated with learning and processing emotional response, which I found very interesting because I'm always trying to find ways to speed up learning and how can you maximize learning or optimize learning so it takes a shorter time to learn the same skill or the same technique. And then it was because it had increased in size that memory consolidation had improved, so your ability to form memories and store them in your brain had improved, and then your emotional processing had improved as well. And basically that was looking at how you reacted to certain situations or how you were able to process certain situations and how emotional you are in certain situations. And because the hippocampus had increased in volume, that basically showed that they were better able to process emotional responses. They weren't as emotional in different situations, and that they were better capable of managing their own thoughts and emotions. And then one of the last findings that they actually came out with was that there was reduced stress-induced cortisol in the body. And basically stress-induced cortisol is associated with like anxiety, nervousness, and it can actually exacerbate anxiety symptoms. So it can make, if you're an anxious person in general, having high levels of cortisol or being chronically stressed is going to make you more likely to have an anxiety attack, is the easiest way to break it down. High levels of stress-induced cortisol then is associated with reduced amount of a thing called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It sounds very sciencey, but BDNF is a brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is associated with neuroplasticity and the brain changing and the brain's ability to change and learn new things. So if you have high levels of cortisol in your body, that isn't produced as much and your brain isn't as plastic and isn't as able to form new memories, consolidate new memories, and improve skills, basically, if you're highly stressed. So that's basically all I wanted to talk about right now in terms of how the brain adapts to meditation, what's happening during a meditation, and then how it changes over time in experienced meditators. And I wanted to give that background for people who know that there is benefits of meditation but don't know exactly what happens. I kind of wanted to give a brief overview. Now, there's obviously a lot more that happens, and I'm no neuroscientist, so I can't go into the real details of it, and I'm sure people can explain it in more detail. But on a general basis, you can see that the brain does improve in ways that would be beneficial to daily life and would be beneficial to your own health and well-being. From that, then, I'm going to just talk a small bit about the different types of meditation. Now, I won't go through all of them. It's not exactly an exhaustive list. I just wanted to pick out a few that you may be able to implement in your own life and that may be handy for yourself. So the first would be Zen meditation, and it's probably the most famous or oldest form of meditation that we know of, and it's the Buddhist style meditation. Really simple. Now there is other levels of it, or you can make it more complex if you need to, but the idea of it is you're just following the breath in and out of your body, and then you're sitting in an upright posture, and you're trying to foster a sense of presence and alertness. And that'd be Zen meditation. Then there is a mantra meditation, and that is when you use a word or syllable or a phrase and you're repeating that. So that's going to be your point of focus then. So if you're using the word, let's say calm, and you're repeating that non-stop, then that's your mantra, or you can make it into a sentence, something that's more unique to yourself or more original to yourself. You can use something that's more original or more unique to yourself, and that can be used then to cultivate self-confidence and compassion towards others. That's kind of the idea behind mantra. But you're basically changing your focus from your breath to a certain word. So in a way, you could say that the rosary is a form of mantra meditation because of the fact that you're repeating that same prayer over and over again for a given time. It could fall under that category. Next then, and one that I use with a lot of clients, would be the body scan. And the body scan is really simple. You're starting from your head, working down towards your toes. And the easiest way to think about it is that there is a photocopier light moving over your whole body. So you're scanning your whole body from top to bottom. And its aim is to sync body and mind. And it's especially useful for athletes or people who are going to be performing, as your awareness of your body improves just from doing it. You'll feel it yourself. You'll feel that you're a lot more in tune after doing it. So really simple. You're starting from your head, working your way down, all the way out to your fingertips, all the way down to your toes, and you're taking note or bringing attention to any discomfort, any ache, any tension, and you're just trying to relax it. You're not doing too much about it. You're only bringing that awareness to it. If you want to, you can breathe through it and try to relax it, but really it's just that scan and that awareness and that syncing of the body and mind is what you're trying to, or is the goal of that one. The last couple then would be visualization. This big one, similar to that mantra, but with the visualization, it's one that athletes use a lot in terms of skill acquisition, trying to improve a skill when they're not doing it or when they are just about to do it or just before it. And this is where you're visualizing something or someone, and you're replacing that breath again with a mental image. So you can obviously continue with your breath, continue with your breathing, but you're using that mental image as your focus point. Or you could be playing in terms of sports, you could be visualizing kicking a ball over the bar, visualizing that ball hitting your boot, traveling over the bar. In business, you could be visualizing nailing a business meeting or nailing a presentation. How it would feel, how good you feel before and after, what your body would feel like going through it. The more in depth you think about it, the better it works. And on this one, there is actually a good bit of science or even a small bit of sports psychology that goes into this in terms of if you do think about a movement, those brain areas are activated as if you carried out that movement. Not to the same degree, but if you can think about it with the same emotion and same focus, you can actually activate the areas of your brain. And they did that study on, or they did a study on monkeys in terms of visualization, where they first recorded the areas of the brain of a monkey picking up a banana, and then they had somebody reaching, they had the monkey in a cage or whatever, and they had him watch somebody pick up a banana. And they found the same areas of the brain were activated in terms of in relation to reaching out in the motor cortex, grabbing that and then bringing it back in as well when they watch somebody else do it. Reflection then is one that you could do yourself. You can do journaling or you can do it during a meditation, and you're basically asking yourself questions. And a lot of meditation experts say to ask yourself in the second person as opposed to the first person. So what are you most grateful for? If I was talking to myself, I'd say, what are you most grateful for? And the idea is that using the second person, it discourages your intellectual mind from actually ruminating and coming out with, or rationalizing, I should say, the thought, and it gives you a different perspective on the same question. And this can make you more aware, or you want to become more aware of your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions that arise then when you actually ask the question, what pops up, and then even what answer comes out. What way is your thought pattern going? Are you thinking about a certain topic or subject or a certain person when you say that? Or are you looking inside? Or what way does your thoughts actually go on that? Loving kindness then is another one, and it basically is you have an image of somebody in your head that you don't have to like them. It doesn't make a difference if you like them or not. It could be of yourself, it could be somebody else. So basically you're directing positive energy and goodwill towards yourself and the other person. And it can be useful in situations that you may be holding a grudge, or you have unhappy feelings, or you have resent towards somebody. That loving kindness can help you let that go. That's one of the ideas behind it. And it can be towards yourself as well. If you feel that if you feel you have negative feelings that are directed towards yourself a lot, that loving kindness can really help you get over that and help you come to terms with it. So that's what I wanted to talk about in relation to types of it. Now, I gave you a general, or just a few ones that you could take away yourself. But I'm going to talk about my own meditation challenge and what I use specifically in my meditations over the month of September, and what I've taken from that and what I've started using it more now, and what I found helped me and worked. So at the start, because I was only getting 30 minutes of a meditation, I was basically using that box breathing method where you're counting five, counting for five and then inhale, holding for five, exhaling for five, and then holding for five. And I was using that nearly as a mantra, that I was counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then holding and then let out. And I was doing that for the 30 minutes because I found at the start it was very easy to notice, or I was very aware of when I came off or fell off track and I started thinking about something else. Now, the most important takeaway, or most important thing you have to think about with meditation is, it's not about, well, it is about keeping your mind focused on a task. But what a lot of people fall down on is they say, I can only do it for 10 to 15 seconds and then I fall off track and I get angry at myself and I just don't want to do it anymore. But if we can reframe that in a way, so I heard a great quote, it was actually from Tim Ferriss, and he said that the objective of meditation is, or I'm paraphrasing now, but the objective of meditation is to still your mind. But the real rep, or the real bicep curl of meditation, is catching yourself trailing off and bringing yourself back to the focus again. When you think of it that way, it makes it easier in that you can reward yourself every time that you go off track and you jump back on again. Because that's what you're trying to do. That's the skill. That's what you have to be able to do. And that's where that attentional control comes in. Because it is hard, and at the start it's very difficult to keep on track for over 10 seconds or even 15 seconds. You'll find that you'll trail off straight away. But when you know, or when you realize that you've set down for your 10 minutes or you've set down for your 15 minutes, and every time that you go off track you're going to bring yourself back, and if you just stay disciplined on that, you'll find that after a couple of days you don't actually go off track as much as you thought. And if you do, you're more aware of it, you might not go down the rabbit hole as much, and you're able to pull yourself back into it. And for me, that was the most, I want to use the word liberating, but that definitely helped me concentrate on, or helped me to focus on improving the skill, or refining my skill, more so than trying to sit there for 30 minutes and keep my mind quiet. Because then I would notice after, let's say, if I was in a 5 minutes of a meditative state and that there was nothing coming through my mind, or nothing too much going through my mind, or nothing that I connected to, let's say, that I jumped on board when a thought came in and followed it. Once I got, let's say, 5 minutes of that state, then when I came off it and I noticed myself going off board and maybe following along or going down some rabbit hole, some thought, then when I brought myself back again, I would realize that I was in such a meditative state for so long, and it was very rewarding for me. And I found as I went through it, now obviously depending on the day and how I slept the night before and all that, that I really improved that, and that skill had come on a lot. Now in a 30-minute meditation, you might get 15 minutes of a meditative state, for me anyway, in that I feel that I was in, like, that's near the end when I got relatively good at it for myself. I might get 15 minutes, and the other 15 minutes I'm just thinking about random stuff. But for those 15 minutes, you're nearly in a flow state, and you're in this state of relaxation and concentration. And it's actually I suppose you could say it's a euphoric state. It's real. It's like when you're in a performance and everything's going right. That's what that meditative flow state is like. So it is addictive when you get there. So once the time started going up then from the box breathing, and I started jumping onto other forms, I used an app called Neo, and it was actually sent in to me in the meditation group on Facebook. A lady sent it to me. She said to try it out because it gives step by steps on how to use different techniques. So I jumped on board and I said I'd try it. I thought it was a free app. It's a free app at the start. It teaches you 10 steps of meditation and what you can do in each of them. And I found that was a huge help in that, because of the box breathing. If you're doing that for, once you get above, let's say 40 minutes, 45 minutes of the same thing, it can be in a way a bit monotonous. So I found that changing it up a small bit, trying out different techniques, was probably the way to go, since I was going to be doing it for so long over the month. So in that app then, it actually taught me a few different things. So one was counting, and it was this was one that really opened my eyes to it. It was, when you're doing the meditation, count 10 breaths. So you're inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, and see if you can get to 10 breaths. And at the start, I could not get to 10 breaths, and I was very strict in that if I did fall off track, and if I was wondering was I on breath 6 or breath 7 there, I would just go straight back to the start and I'd start again. So I wouldn't be I tried not guessing as much as possible. And if I felt that I lost track, I just went back to the start and I did it again, because I knew I was going to be there for so long anyway. And you'd be surprised how difficult it is to actually sit there and count 10 breaths without trailing off. Now, and then when I did start nailing that down, then I worked up to 20 breaths. But being strict with that, and being strict that if I didn't know if it was 6 or 7 or 5 or 6, 7 or 8, it was nearly always 6 and 7 that I kind of started to trail off a bit. But once I realised that couldn't exactly pinpoint what I was on, I went back to the start and I started again. And that was my way of doing it, because then I knew if I hit 10 breaths that I was confident that I had counted every one of those breaths, and that there wasn't a point in the middle that I was unsure. So that was a handy way of doing it for me. After that, then there was other ones, like naming different thought patterns that come in. So when I was sitting there thinking, what I do is I would say, let's say planning, anticipation, excitement, I would just name it. So if it popped to mind, instead of connecting to it a lot, I would just name what the type of thinking I was doing, I suppose, the easiest way to describe it. So if I was thinking about what I'm going to be doing that evening, I would call it, like if I was thinking, I have to go here and make dinner, I'd say planning. And then once I'd named that thought pattern, it would go away. It'd start to relax. And then another one might come up, and it might be anticipation. I was waiting on something to happen. Or excitement was another one. These different things. Or you could even have, let's say, worry, anxiousness, different things like that popping up as well. But naming the thought pattern helped a lot in that it disconnected my thoughts from my emotions. So because I was anxious, I could see that one, let's say if I was worried about something, I could see the thought pattern, I could see it building, and I could feel the emotion then start building up behind it. And I was able to disconnect the two of those by naming it and then leaving that aside. As in, I'll deal with that later if I have to. That really taught me that there was a difference between, let's say, me, myself, and then the thoughts that pop into my mind. Because you get a lot of random thoughts that you just don't think about. Like, as in, when you're on a day-to-day, you get so many random thoughts. But if you connect emotion to all of those thoughts, you're going to be on a roller coaster. So, and then after that one, what I did was found a technique that I kind of started developing myself. Now, I'm sure somebody else has come up with it way before me, but one I found really worked for myself was that once I had hit that state that I felt that I was in that meditative state, I used a foreground and background, or front and back type of technique, in that if there was something on the front of my mind, I call it the front. But if there was something going on in the background and a bit of talk, and I could kind of hear myself chatting to myself in the back of my mind, I said back or background. So I use that. That's in the front of my mind, that's in the back of my mind. And that really helped me differentiate between that conscious and then not exactly subconscious, but on a middle ground, in that your conscious mind is what you're thinking of right now, and then what's going on in the back of your mind is driving a lot of the time what you're thinking about. So by picking, saying, that's the front of my mind, me thinking about I have to get up and make dinner, and then the back of my mind is I have to be gone out of the house by 7 o'clock. So that one of them was driving the other one. But that front and back really helped me stay in the state when I got in there, because you could feel it creeping up in the back. You could feel it building and building and building, and then it's at the front. But if I named it and I said that's at the back, then it'd very easily just calm down again and go away, because I knew where I was, I knew what state I wanted to be in, and I wanted to stay there. So that front and back kept me focused in that state. So what did I learn exactly from the challenge, or what have I learned from the last couple of months of meditating a bit more frequently? Subjectively, I've found that my patience has definitely improved a bit, and I feel myself that my emotional control has improved, because if I'm in a heated discussion, or if I'm in a discussion with someone, I'm able to rationalize stuff, I feel myself, a lot better now, in that I don't jump on the emotions, and I don't, even if I feel that they are getting emotional, if they're getting a bit, I suppose, more aroused, or not aroused, I don't want to use that word, but if they're getting a bit more aggressive, it's easier to pick that out. It's easier to say, well, they're becoming aggressive because of this. And because you're more rational in your thinking, and you're not just rising to their level all the time, you are able to control that discussion a bit more and situation a bit more, and you might be able to level with them and bring them down, and you can control your conversations a lot better. Then after that, I found that it was a lot easier to build my routine once I had the meditation challenge done, because I felt I was falling out of routine. So I felt the mornings I missed it, that the rest of the day my focus might have been off a small bit, and that my concentration was off a small bit once I finished up that meditation challenge. Most of all, though, the thing I took from it, or the thing I learned, was I absolutely love the meditative state, or the flow state that you get in when you actually get to that point of you are completely relaxed and your mind it's not exactly blank, but it's very close to it. And it's a really euphoric feeling. It's definitely an addictive feeling, in that it's just, you're really present. Presence probably is the word I'm trying to get to. Presence and alertness. So it comes back to that Zen meditation. You're really present in the moment. There's nothing going on. Well, there is small things, but you're taking note of those, and you're just becoming aware of them, and then you're letting them go again. And you're able to just sit still and not think of anything else. And that was my favorite part of the whole thing that I've learned, and that I'm always trying to improve on every day. So some days I might sit down for 30 minutes and I might only get there for 2 minutes. And some days I might get in for 10 or 15 minutes. But I want to try build that up so I can get into that state in a couple of breaths, or maybe 20, 25 minutes. I can imagine that the Buddhists are in that for so long, and I can see, not that I become a Buddhist anytime soon, but I can see how they could devote their life to that. The gist of what I wanted to talk about today, I touched on a few different things there. I spoke a good bit about the effect meditation has on your brain, and the different areas of your brain that get bigger and smaller, and different areas that are activated. So really quickly, it improves your attentional control, it improves your emotional self-regulation, which is your ability to control thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And then in turn, that changes the size of your amygdala, which is your fear processing part of your brain, so it makes it smaller. And then it increases the size of your hippocampus and your prefrontal cortex, which is associated with improving your decision making, how you moderate yourself socially, how your relationships are, how you work in your relationships with different people, then your personality, and actually improves your learning speed as well, which is your hippocampus region. Then I talked about the different types, so your Zen meditation, your mantra meditation, your body scans, reflection or visualization, love and kindness. And then lastly, I talked a bit on the meditation challenge myself, what I learned from it, talked about the flow states that you get into once you get there, and the different techniques that I found worked for myself. And I should say that some techniques worked some days, other ones worked other days. So it's nice to have a different repertoire, arsenal of them, so that you can pick and choose between them. Now, if anyone is planning on getting into it, there's a couple of apps. Calm, Headspace, Waking Up. Calm is one, Headspace another. Waking Up is one by Sam Harris. He's a neuroscientist. And then the one that I used myself and found most beneficial, because it gave me different steps to work on for a couple of days, was that Neo app. So that's NEO. And I think it's Neo Mindfulness. But that's everything, guys, that I wanted to talk about today. I hope you took something from this. If you're building a routine, if you want to start building a meditation routine, the best thing is pick a time of the day that you can be consistent at it. Because if you're trying to fit it into your day, every day trying to decide when you're going to do it, it makes it a lot more difficult than if you know straight away when you get up in the morning, you're going to be sitting for 10 minutes. Or you're going to be sitting for 5 minutes and doing it. So pick a time of the day, pick a part of your routine that you can connect it to, and then work on that. I would say at the start, you can start off with 10 minutes. For me, I really noticed a difference once I hit that 30-minute mark. And that's what made me decide that I want to do that meditation challenge and see if I got up and built my way up to that 2 hours, what that would feel like. And the 2 hours is difficult to sit down and sit there for 2 hours. Your legs get sore and your back gets a bit tight when you're sitting there. But it does change the way you think, definitely, and definitely has an effect on your body and your mind. So I would recommend it to anyone to try it out. If anyone has any questions, guys, please send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com. Get onto me on Instagram at the Mobility Tutor, and then get onto me at LinkedIn on Robbie Cassidy, and then brand will be underneath it to be as Mobility Tutor. Send me a message. Let me know what you think of this podcast. Let me know if this is something you want me to talk on a bit more, or if you want me to go into a bit more detail. But that is going to be everything for today, guys. Check out my website, I must say, as well, actually, at themobilitytutor.com. And thanks a million for listening. I would love if you could add a review to, I think it's iTunes is the only one that you can really review on. If you can add a review to that and rate it, that would be it's a huge help. It definitely drives up my position in the charts and in the polls. So I'd love if you could do that. It gives me a better idea of what you want to hear about and what you want me to cover. So I'm an open book, guys. If there's anything you want to say or anything you want me to cover, send me a message and I'll do my best to get that. Thanks a million for listening. I will chat to you all again at the same time next week. So we're keeping it with Sundays for now. It's working well. That's everything, guys. Thanks a million. I will chat to you all soon. Have a good one.